In this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can edit a cinematic travel video. In part 1, I showed you how to capture all of your clips, and in this video, we're going to be taking all of those clips and editing them into a short cinematic sequence with music, color grading, and sound effects. So let's take a look at that sequence now, and when we come back, we'll dive into the edit, break it down, and I'll show you everything you need to know to create something similar. Okay, so that exact sequence is right here on my timeline. It's only short, less than 30 seconds long, but there's quite a lot going on here. So in this video, I'm going to break the editing process down into 5 simple steps so all of this becomes much more manageable. We're going to start with the visuals, focusing purely on what we can see, clip selection, pacing, cuts, and transitions. Then we're going to move on to the hook. This is how we grab our audience's attention. Really important step. Music, what type of music do we use and how do we edit this music? Sound design, this is what will really help bring this edit to life. And then we're going to look at color grading all of these clips to give them a much more unique style. I'm editing everything in Final Cut Pro today, but don't worry because all of these tips and techniques can be applied to pretty much any editing software. I'm also going to be getting all of my music and sound effects from Epidemic Sound, who are the sponsor of today's video, and are offering a huge 50% off their yearly plan to anyone that uses the link in my description, which is huge, but we'll get to music and sound effects in a bit. For now, let's just start from scratch and build this edit from the ground up. So you've shot all of your clips, you've opened up your editing software, and you've probably got something that looks a little bit like this, which I know when you're first starting out can feel really daunting, like you've got a long way to go, but I promise you, just follow these steps, tackle this edit in stages, and it will all become much easier. Now, the first step is to just focus on the visuals. So let's cut the fat and let's get our timeline full of nothing but usable clips. So I've dragged everything onto my timeline like this, and I'm now going to go through each clip, picking out only the best bits. Now, if you've watched part 1 of this series and shot your clips, like I said, none of these clips should be long. Hopefully no more than a few seconds, 10 seconds max, and this will give us a good variety of shots to work with. Now, when you're making your way through your clips, just look for the most interesting and engaging part. For example, this shot here of the red phone boxes and the London Eye. It's okay, but it lacks energy and movement. So I'm just going to skim to the part where the bike passes through the frame. Personally, I think this part of the clip is much more interesting. So I'm going to cut the fat, get rid of the boring parts of this clip, and just keep the good bit, and then move on to the next. And a lot of this is instinctive. Just go with your gut. What part of the clip do you find most interesting? Because if it's interesting to you, chances are it's probably going to be interesting to others. Take this shot here, for example. We have Big Ben. Not bad, but later in this clip, we have 2 red buses passing through the frame. This bit is more interesting and has more movement, so this is the part of the clip that I'm going to keep. Now, some of these clips will be really obvious which bits to keep and some less so. This flag, for example, I want to use the bit where the flag is flapping the most, not when it looks all floppy. Or these shots of birds. This one here looks okay, but this shot here, where we can see the London skyline in the background, has more depth and looks much more interesting. So let's go with that. Now at this stage, you're just picking out the best parts of each clip. It doesn't mean that you're definitely going to use these clips, but at least we're making a really big dent in this footage and getting closer to the end results. And we're going to do this to every clip that we've shot. Some clips just might not be good enough to make the final edit. If that's the case, we're simply going to delete those altogether, and you'll end up with a timeline full of nothing but usable clips. Now, once we have all of these clips on our timeline, it's time to put them in some kind of order, but it's important to think about what shots cut together nicely and work well with each other. It's also at this stage that there's a slight crossover between the visuals and the music. Now, you may have already chosen a track for your travel video, in which case, great. I would recommend now getting that track and just laying it down on your timeline like this, because this is going to give you a good feel for the rhythm and the pace of your edit. Now, if you don't already have a track for your travel video, then it's at this stage that I like to start playing some tracks in the background whilst I'm editing these clips, because more often than not, I hear something that just works with the footage whilst I'm editing it. So I've got Epidemic Sound open and playing music on one tab, and I'm editing on another. And for this, I just want something subtle. So I've been listening to a playlist of cinematic piano tracks, and I've landed on this one here called Dismantle by Peter Sandberg. Now, the reason I've gone for something subtle is that I want to include a lot of sound design in this sequence, and I don't want any music to overpower or dominate the edit too much. So once you've got your music either playing in the background or you've laid it out on your timeline, it's then time to start thinking about putting all of these shots into some kind of an order. For example, this is a good shot, and this is a good shot, but they don't cut together very well. This first shot is panning to the left, and the next shot is panning to the right. So there's this really awkward and jarring cut, compared to, say, this clip here, panning to the right, and this clip here, also panning to the right. This makes for a much more seamless transition. Really important this. We want to seamlessly take our audience from one shot to the next. Now, talking of transitions, in part one, I showed you how to shoot your own unique transitions. So let's sprinkle some of these into this sequence to help us transition from one shot to the next. So we've got these two shots on the timeline at the moment. We just have a straight cut taking us from one shot to the next. But now we're going to get this messy clip that I shot at Piccadilly Circus, and we're just going to pick out 5 or 6 frames of this clip, and we're going to lay it on top of this cut like this. And we now have our own custom transition taking us from one shot to the next. This makes the transition so much more interesting than a simple straight cut. And this is before we've even added sound effects. As soon as we add some sound effects to this transition, it really comes to life. And again, I'm going to make my way through these clips, putting them in an order which I think works best, being really brutal with this edit. I've got a lot of clips here, and I want to get this sequence down to around about 30 seconds. So I'm only choosing the best bits. I'm also thinking about visually what shots look best, as well as what shots transition from one to the other. And if I struggle with cutting 2 clips together, I'm going to add some of my own unique transitions. Okay, let's talk about the hook, because the hook is really important. It doesn't matter whether you're making a 2-hour feature film, a 15-minute YouTube video, or a 30-second travel video for Instagram. The hook is what's going to grab people's attention and keep them watching. And the length of your hook is dependent on the duration of your final film or sequence. So because this travel video is only 30 seconds long, we only have a few seconds to grab our audience's attention. So how do we do it? Well, let's take a look at the opening hook of this sequence, and I'll show you exactly what we've done. Let's watch it a couple of times, because if you blink, you'll miss it. Here we go. Okay, and again. Okay, let's skim to the 2-second mark, and as you can see, we have 7 clips within the first 2 seconds of this sequence. We have sound effects as well, but we'll get to those later. And there's reasoning behind all 7 clips, by the way. Each one serves a purpose. I can't stress how important the opening hook of your video is, so it's worth putting a lot of time and focus into the first few seconds of your video. Now, let's start at the beginning. We have this shot here of a police officer. Now, our eyes are drawn to faces, so this makes for a great opening shot to this video. We then cut to a British flag, instantly letting our audience know where we are. We're giving them information. We then cut to one of our custom transitions, quickly panning to the right of this shot here, a black cab. Again, very British and iconic. And this black cab is moving to the right. So the transition between shot 3 and 4 is much more seamless. We have motivated movement. We then hard cut to this shot here of the red phone boxes and the London Eye, just as this bike flies through the frame. Note here also that these first 7 clips also lend themselves very well to sound effects. This is a deliberate decision. A flapping flag, a transition, a black cab, a bike. So part of the reasoning for choosing these clips is not only that we're giving our audience lots of information and making it crystal clear where we are, but we're also giving ourselves lots of options when it comes to sound design. Then from the London Eye, we cut to this shot of Big Ben. Again, iconic, works works well for sound effects. And we then cut to this shot of a red phone box. So a lot going on in the first couple of seconds of this video. You kind of need to watch it a couple of times to truly see what's happening, but that's exactly what we want. Ideally, we want people to watch this video and then go back and watch it again, doubling our views and giving it a higher chance of being recommended by Instagram or whatever platform that you're sharing it on. Also, what I'm going to do, because someone asked me in part 1, is upload some of these clips to a Google Drive folder so that you can download them and start practicing with them yourself. I will put a link to that Google Drive folder in the description below, and please do tag me in anything that you create because I would love to see your results. Okay, moving on, let's talk about music. Music is such a big part of any travel video because it instantly sets the tone, the feel, and the mood. For example, if I'd have chosen a different track for this edit, the vibe would have instantly changed. Let's take a look. Yeah, quite the difference, right? Now, as mentioned, I've gone for something very subtle with this edit, just a soft cinematic solo piano, because I wanted to include lots of sound effects in this edit, and I didn't want to have the music overpower the edit too much, but you can use whatever music you feel works best with your footage. I used Epidemic Sound for this. They make it incredibly easy to find exactly what you're looking for. You can literally search by mood, genre, or theme, which makes the whole process incredibly quick and easy. Or you could do what I just did and come up here to the search bar and type in, for example, cinematic piano. I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted, but I just needed to hear a few options before making a decision. And as soon as I heard this one, I knew it was exactly what I was looking for. But look, here's where it gets really interesting, because Epidemic Sound have a brand new feature. If we go down here to this scissor icon and click this, we now have different length options of this track. We have the full length version, a 15-second, 30, 45, and 60-second version of this track. This is a massive time saver because now we don't have to edit this track. I want the 30-second version, so that's the version I'm going to use. If you haven't tried Epidemic Sound yet, you definitely should. They really are an incredible place to get music and sound effects for your video projects. I will link a free trial as well as any discounts that I have in the description below, so be sure to check it out. Okay, so once you've got your track and you've laid it on your timelines, you might just want to finesse your edit a little bit. Maybe there's a couple of beats of this track that you think it would work well if you cut on. Maybe there's a slow part of this track where one clip would lend itself better than another. You might want to rearrange a few of these clips to make them work best for your chosen track. And once you've locked in your clips as well as your music, it's then time to move on to sound design. Now, there are 3 ways that we're going to be working with sound design when it comes to this sequence. The first is by using natural sounds that we recorded on the day. So each of these clips has audio, and it's nice to include some of this audio to give the edit an authentic atmosphere. For example, we have the sound of this bike as it passes through the frame. This sounds great, so let's keep it. Or we have the sound of these horses' hooves hitting the ground. Love it, sounds great, let's keep it in. And I'm going to go through this sequence, keeping any natural sounds that I think work well and add to this sequence. Equally, there might be some clips where the audio just sounds terrible or awkward, like this shot here of the war veteran saluting. You can actually hear me directing him in the background.
One more salute, that's it, and go.
I definitely don't want my voice in this, so this audio isn't usable, so let's delete it. I'm also going to lower the volume of some of these clips slightly, also paying close attention to my audio levels. I don't want anything peaking. We don't want any of our audio levels going into the red. And what we'll end up with is a sequence with music as well as natural sounds. Now, at this stage, what you'll notice is that if some of the audio wasn't usable and you've deleted it, there's now chunks of audio missing throughout your edit. And if that's the case, we're simply going to hone in on these clips and replace the audio. For example, this shot here of the British flag, the original audio for this clip is terrible. Car horns and traffic. So this is where we add our own sound design. And if you don't have the sound effect of a flag flapping that you've recorded yourself, then don't worry, because we can easily find these online. So I'm going to head back over to Epidemic Sound, go to Sound Effects, search for flag, and here we go right here. Flapping flag fabric sound, perfect. So I'm going to download this and place it underneath my clip of the flag, and we now have this. So much better, so much more professional. And again, we're going to go through this sequence looking for any shots that are missing audio and then download anything we need or we think that will add to these clips. For example, I really wanted the sound of Big Ben in the opening hook to this sequence, but foolishly, I completely forgot to record it on the day. But this isn't a problem because I simply went over to Epidemic Sound, typed in Big Ben, and there it was, the sound effect of the City of London, Big Ben bell ringing. Perfect. All these clips here that I have of birds, they look great, but I don't have any bird sounds like the flapping of wings or the squawking of seagulls, so I'm simply going to download them. So sound design and effects aren't just for replacing bad audio, they're also for times when you may have forgotten to record that audio. This is why having access to a huge library of sound effects comes in incredibly useful. Okay, so now what we have is a sequence with all of our edited clips. We've got music, natural sounds from the day, as well as natural sounds that we've downloaded and added ourselves. Now, the third way we're going to work with sound design in this sequence is by using unnatural sound effects. But what do I mean by unnatural sound effects? Well, let's take a look at the opening hook. For example, we have some natural sounds here. We've got some original city audio here to give it some atmosphere. We've got the sound effect of a flag flapping that I got from Epidemic Sound. But look here, we have a short cinematic gritty riser. Now, a riser is a sound effect that starts quiet, gets louder and louder, and then stops very suddenly. It sounds a bit like this. Now, risers are a great sound effect to have in your editing arsenal, and they can really add some creative flair to your edits, but a riser isn't exactly a natural sound. It's not something that you would ordinarily hear in the city, not when you compare it to, say, the sound of traffic or Big Ben chiming. So this is what we call unnatural sounds, and adding unnatural sounds to your edit is just as important as adding natural sounds to your edit. This is, of course, a stylistic choice, but personally, I think adding these sounds is quite often the difference between your average everyday edit and something that is much more likely to keep your audience engaged. So I'm going to do another pass of this edit looking for opportunities to add some more unnatural sound effects. And the key to this is only adding them where we think they will add to the edit or make sense. A riser at the beginning makes sense because, as we know, there are 7 clips in the first couple of seconds, which all happen very quickly. So that works well with the intensity of a riser. The transitions that we made and put between clips, these work really well with a riser. Whoosh sound effects are another great one. These fast whipping pans that we have throughout the edit look great, but add a whoosh sound effect and they really help bring them to life. This shot here, for example, whipping from the black cab to this guy on a bike. Let's put a whoosh sound effect between these clips and then the sound of a bicycle bell. Here's what the shot sounded like before. And here's what it sounds like now. So as you can see, by adding a combination of natural and unnatural sound effects to your edits, it's a really great way of taking them to the next level. Okay, moving on, color grading. Now, color grading is your opportunity to give your edit its own unique stylized look, and in this case, it's also a great way to make my smartphone footage look less like smartphone footage. Now, whether you're enhancing natural colors or creating a more stylized look, color grading allows you to shape how your audience feels whilst watching your travel video. For example, I could just boost some of the saturation of these clips, maybe adjust the contrast a little. This could work, but the day that I shot these clips in London was a very dull and overcast day. So I want to stylize this footage to best suit this mood and feel. So for this, I've added one of my own custom color grading LUTs. This is my blockbuster LUT from my Cinematic 2.0 LUT pack. I will link this in the description below. Use this LUT or anyone for that matter. It's completely up to you. A LUT, by the way, for those of you that don't know, is a color grading preset. The reason I've chosen this LUT is because it adds a slight teal to the shadows and it adds a little bit more contrast, ultimately very quickly and easily, giving it a more cinematic and stylized look. Color grading LUTs will work with just about any editing software that allows you to color grade, by the way. Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, CapCut, which is free editing software, all allow you to import and use LUTs. So if you do struggle to color grade your videos manually, LUTs are a great way to help you do it quickly and easily. I find less is more. I have the intensity of this LUT set to 25%, which is just enough to get the look that I'm going for. Now, instead of color grading each clip individually, I've added added an adjustment layer to all of these clips and added my color grade to that adjustment layer. An adjustment layer allows you to add an effect to it, and then that effect is added to all clips underneath. And to finish this sequence, I'm just going to add some cinematic bars to the top of these clips like this. This will help give me a more cinematic aspect ratio. Not necessary if you're shooting vertically, but definitely will help give you a more cinematic feel when shooting landscape. And for those of you that really want to take your shooting and editing of cinematic sequences to the next level, then I have a 2-hour crash course perfect for beginners. I will also link that in the description below. But that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.